I'd like to lift up how we might live compassionate lives. It's easy to talk about, but maybe harder to live. In a book called Radical Acceptance, Embracing Your Life with the Heart of a Buddha, the author speaks about how we have trouble seeing the humanity in people who are different, sometimes even in people who are close by and not all that different. We may see anyone outside of our experience as unreal or that they do not have feelings like we do. And let me read a couple of pages to you here. When we are caught in our own self-centered drama, everyone else becomes other to us, different and unreal. The world becomes a backdrop to our own special experience, and everyone in it serves as supporting cast, some as adversaries, some as allies, most as simply irrelevant. Because involvement with our personal desires and concerns prevents us from paying close attention to anyone else, those around us, even family and friends, can become unreal, two-dimensional cardboard figures, not humans with wants and fears and throbbing hearts. The more different someone seems from us, the more unreal they may feel to us. We can too easily ignore or dismiss people when they are of a different race or religion, when they come from a different socioeconomic class, assessing them as either superior or inferior, better or worse, important or unimportant. We distance ourselves. Fixating on appearances, their looks, behavior, ways of speaking, we peg them as certain types. They are HIV positive or an alcoholic, a leftist or fundamentalist, a criminal or powermonger, a feminist or do-gooder. Sometimes our typecasting has more to do with temperament. The person is boring or narcissistic, needy or pushy, anxious or depressed. Whether extreme or subtle, typing others makes the real human invisible to our eyes and closes our heart. We each have our own complex and largely unconscious system of classifying others. And the author speaks of her own inclinations and says, "When I read the newspaper or watch the news, I regularly run into my own anger and dislike toward public figures who are rich, Caucasian, usually male, powerful, and conservative. As I hold tightly to my views of right and wrong, I type these senators, corporate executives, and editors-in-chief as the bad guys, as part of the problem. They become characters in an upsetting movie, not living, breathing humans." In her novel Stones from the River, set in Nazi Germany, Ursula Heggie reveals the suffering of the other in a startling way. The story is told through the eyes of a courageous woman, Trudy, who risks her life to hide the Jews living in her small town. Trudy is an insightful and appealing character. She is also a dwarf. As the story unfolds, we begin to see through Trudy's eyes the pain of being the other. She longs for her neighbors and townspeople to know her, to see past her small, awkward body and broad, outsized face. Trudy can well identify with those she gives refuge to because she too suffers the nonverbal and spoken slights that let her know she doesn't belong. Reading this story was a jarring awakening for me. I wondered how many people each day I am unable to see and respond to because I unknowingly classify them as other. I could easily have lived in Trudy's village and turned my head away in embarrassment, not wanting to look too closely at this human oddity when she and I passed each other on the street. Our capacity to look away from the realness and the suffering of others has horrendous consequences. For years, much of the world turned away from the plight of the Jews in Nazi Germany. Today, we might not recognize the realness of the massive number of people dying of AIDS, the horror of living in the Middle East and Afghanistan, in the many war-torn and devastatingly poor places on this globe. In the summer of 1991, I was flying across the country, talking with the woman sitting next to me. She told me her son was in the Air Force and had safely returned from Desert Storm, the war with Iraq. Then she leaned toward me with a smile and spoke softly, "You know, it went really well. Only a few of our boys died." My heart sank. Only a few of our boys. What about all the Iraqi boys and women and children? What about the millions who were yet to die from radioactive contaminants, or from starvation and disease during the economic embargo that followed the war? Our boys. Once someone is an unreal other, we lose sight of how they hurt. Because we don't experience them as feeling beings, we not only ignore them, we can inflict pain on them without compunction. Not seeing that others are real leads to a father disowning his son for being gay, divorced parents using their children as weapons. All the enormous suffering of violence and war comes from our basic failure to see that others are real. Our immediate response of attraction or aversion, of interest or inattention, is part of our biological programming for survival. How a person looks, the way they smell and speak, alerts us to whether or not they are from the same tribe. When we are trapped in this biological trance, we can only read behaviors and opinions as signs of friend or foe. While this evolutionary conditioning to perceive difference is powerful, we also have the capacity to relax our armor. We can enlarge our sense of tribe. This is an experience of radical acceptance that is at the center of the awakened or enlightened one's path, and to use some terminology from Buddhism, bodhisattva. We can learn to see our shared vulnerability and realize our belonging with all beings.